So I remember when I walked into a hotel room when Gore named Lieberman as his running mate. And I looked at this TV and I was shocked, and I wanted to say, "Shut!" I hadn't heard that since I was 5 years old. Where did that come from? And you know, I wasn't born in Städte. I grew up in Beverly Hills, 95% Jewish.
Grow up in Städte.
I don't think I met someone who wasn't Jewish until I went to Harvard. And I said, "Who are these people with the wreaths on the door?" It's like very strange. I never experienced or never thought of myself experiencing anti-Semitism. I don't know, but there it was. It came right out of me. It was inside there, someplace, lurking in the DNA, in the something, this notion of vulnerability, being exposed. And I want to say, if that's what you're feeling, you're going to look at the law as a means to protect yourself. You're going to want to master the power that would protect the group of which you're a member, even though that membership has no discrete content that you can name. Even though you can't say, "I'm Jewish and therefore this is how I pitch the ball," to use Sandy's allusion to Sandy Koufax. So on this account, I mean, if Mark is correct, it may be that the next generation of Jews don't experience this drive toward constitutional law because they may not be so vulnerable. If Mark is correct that the Jewish organizations have pulled out because no one cares, because we're so strong now we don't care, maybe that reflects itself in the next generation. I don't know. But I would also point to one other phenomenon here very quickly, and then I'll conclude. And that is, I think as I witness myself growing old and watching this scene, a very important change is happening, which is that the line is being drawn not between Jews, Protestants, and Catholics, but between the religious and the non-religious, between the community of the faithful and those who are not religious in their core. And on that line, I fall in the secular line. I would say most of the people I've named in these passages fall. I think they're closer to Rawls by far than they're close to the Satmars. And I think that on that account, Robert Cover, who Suzanne is right to put at the center of things, is a really interesting transitional case, because he became a religious Jew later in his life. And when he looked very deeply inside of himself as a multicultural Jew, as a Jew who had found and created his identity, he found himself more closely allied to the Amish than to the secular Jews, right? He saw himself allied on the side of the religious as opposed to Jews who are also secular Jews. And Cover is, I think, a transitional figure, because even though he did that, he struggled with all his might to generalize and apply application to the insights that he had found inside himself, looking at the religious part of himself. And one of the contributions Suzanne has made to our scholarship here is to show how much violence that required him to do to the Jewish sources that he was trying to explain, because you really, that's a bridge you can't just hop across. You're either on one side of that divide or the other side of that divide, and you can't just blur that difference. It's very hard to do. So that's one set of questions about why you have this overrepresentation. Second question is, do they pitch the ball any differently? Does constitutional law look any different that is done by Larry Tribe and Frank Michelman and Sandy? And I don't. The answer to that, I feel very reluctant to answer that question, because of course any answer is going to be either self-flagellation or self-congratulation. It's very hard to get outside of that for yourself. But if I had to ask, what difference it makes in what I see in the scholarship, I would say I would stress 4 themes that come close to the themes that Morty and Dahlia were stressing in their respective subjects. That is to say, I would say in the work of Jews that I see, there is a comfortableness in moving between memory and text. That there is the power of the text, which illuminates a memory, which in turn illuminates a text. The vibrant exchange between memory and text is something that feels very comfortable, I think, from a lot of rituals that Jews engage in, even if, like myself, all they can do is transliterate the Hebrew and don't know it. So that's one. Second, there's an ease in moving between stability and change, between, on the one hand, acknowledging that this is the law, it's got to endure, and on the other hand, it's got to adapt. And that's a paradox, but Jews In the rituals that I saw, you know, now you have an orange on the Seder table. You didn't used to have an orange on the Seder table. That dialectic is something that Jews in their rituals live with rather consistently. And so I think that might be expressed in the scholarship. Third, there is an ease with a tradition that combines argumentation, dissent, and authority. That is, there's this notion that something is authoritative and fair at the same time. Both of those things simultaneously, a combination of I'm arguing with you, and I'm arguing you because there's an authority, because it matters, and I respect authority at the same time as I insist on my right to dissent. That combination, which is a peculiar one if you think about it, is something that I think Jewish constitutional lawyers tend to be very comfortable with. And finally, the fourth would be that there is this, again, this yoking of disparate instincts in that the scholarship of all of the figures that I've mentioned is at the same time extremely intellectual, abstract, and engaged, practically engaged. So there is this mediation between a very hyper-analytic intelligence and a very in-your-face, grounded engagement with the practical problems. And somehow this is mediated in that scholarship in ways I suspect that comes out of traditions that at least feel comfortable to me. Now, whether exclusive or not, I don't know. So thank you all. Do we have time?